Today in history in 1851, Harper and Brothers published Herman Melville's masterpiece, allegedly, Moby Dick.
Welcome to What the Fuck History, where we discuss the wackiest and weirdest things that make us say, well, what the fuck history. My name is Zachary, and I'm going to do something I never, ever do tonight. And that's follow up on a story I said I'd talk about in a previous episode.
Wow, that's crazy. My name is Meghan, and tonight I'm not telling a depressing story. So don't pigeonhole me into, oh, Meghan's gonna tell a story. It's gonna be so sad.
And I'm Matt. Today I learned the man who made the first ever Xbox also revived an ancient Egyptian recipe for sourdough bread.
Yum.
I want to hear more about this
I have
bread.
to credit Steve with this one, because Steve and I will just send,
Fuck yes,
Steve and I will just send memes to each other in the wee hours of the night.
Yeah.
And
As
so
you
he
should.
sent me this video where a girl was talking about how the guy who made the first Xbox is also like an Egyptologist, and he was on an excavation and discovered like an ancient recipe for sourdough bread, and so he made it. And then she made some equivalency between like the logo of the Xbox and how it looks like most sourdough breads do. And she was like, "This man just loves sourdough bread." And
I would never even thought about that, but you're
yeah,
right.
and so so that was kind of a cool thing. His name is Seamus Blackley, if you're interested in looking him up further. But yeah, he created the first Xbox, and he also
Seamus.
revived thousands of years dead sourdough bread recipe.
That's pretty
I didn't
cool.
even look up to see whether or not he thought it was good. I was just like, I just looked it up to fact check to make sure that that was true, but like I really should have looked up to see whether or not he thought it was a good recipe or not. So anyways, that happened.
That's it.
That
I love
happened.
that. That's so fun. Like, it's so
Yeah,
dumb,
I mean,
but I love it.
it's
like,
dumb and
like,
interesting.
You're right. The Xbox logo
It
does,
does look like a sourdough
how
bread.
you slice a fucking sourdough bread. Yeah.
It does look like a sourdough bread. Love a
Sourdough's
good sourdough.
a solid bread choice.
Yeah, now I want
Yeah.
some.
Me too. I have
Fuck.
cookies though.
That's
I was
fair.
robbed of my ability to have toast.
I have
this
baklava.
evening. I was gonna make myself. I was gonna make myself some eggs and toast.
Ooh, eggs and
Eggs
toasty.
and toast.
Sounds
I was
delicious.
planning on poaching the eggs and having poached eggs on toast, but somebody
That's
ate
a
all the bread
thing.
and
Oh.
Okay,
didn't
rude.
bother to replenish our bread supply. So then I'm complaining about the fact that I don't have any bread to eat my poached eggs on. And everyone's like, well,
Yeah.
you could take some bread out of the freezer. And I was like, I wasn't the one who did it in the first place. I'm going to fight the system.
Yeah, I get that.
So, but anyways, we have a podcast to record, and we're going to start right now. Our strikes have been reset to 0, and our fake game of rock, paper, scissors, that's entirely illusionary, has been played, and our order for tonight, decided by the stars, is Meghan, and then I'm going to go. And then Zach is going to bring up the rear. The caboose! So Meghan,
The caboose.
whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. So the name of my story tonight is called Yasu. Okay, how did you get to Japan though?
Okay.
And that will make more sense.
As your stories
Later.
so often do, I'm assuming that will make more sense later.
So I'm assuming that you all thought I was done with Japan, but here I am to tell you
Why
not
would anyone
today.
assume that? of you?
I have no comment. So if you're hoping for me to tell you that Japan is like not really an old country and company, they're a company now. I'm here to tell you that they are very, very old. And, like, we have a lot to get through, is what I'm saying. So tonight, obviously, I'm going to be talking about Japan. And not just, like, a Japanese person or, like, the country in general, rather something that just, like, happened in it. So this is a story of a man named Yasuke. And he's rumored to have been born in Mozambique and brought to Japan, where he became a samurai. And
Just
this
like
is
Tom
sort
Cruise
of
in that
one of
one
the
movie.
only... Just like Tom Cruise in that one movie. So this is like one of the only instances that we have, you know, an okay amount of evidence of a black man becoming a samurai in Japan. There are few documents that survive containing mentions of Yasuke, but he appears to be the oldest African to appear in the Japanese historical record, and his stint in Japan was very short, just about 3 years, from 1579 to 1582. And he was thought to be brought over by Jesuit missionaries. It's not clear whether he was a slave or a follower of the mission, and also his name was not originally Yasuke. That's a name that was given to him by the daimyo Oda Nobunaga. He is one of the three great unifiers of Japan. But what we do know for sure is that in 1579, Yasuke arrived in Japan in the service of the Jesuit missionary Alessandro Valignano. I fucking hate his last name. Vagina. Alessandro Vagina, that's his name. That's what we're going with. I'm so sorry, Steve. I know that you told me that I could just look these things up online before, but...
No,
I like your
here's
version better.
what's
right
wild is that, like, Steve's gonna be like, this is how you actually pronounce it, but vagina also works. Steve's just so supportive.
I mean,
Absolutely.
He truly is. Let's see. Hold on. Here's pronunciation. It's gonna be like how to pronounce.
this
No,
is the
it doesn't
thing.
give me a
Okay.
short
I
YouTube
need-
video.
I need to
I'm not
explain
into
something
it.
to you. A few weeks ago, Zach was telling a story, and he
Yeah.
was like, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing any of this right. And I was like, the audience won't care as long as you say it with confidence. And then he went into every pronunciation with confidence. So, like,
And it
you
worked.
could just proclaim this man's last name, and there's a 80% chance you're wrong, but at least you were confident about it.
His last name's now Vagina.
That's
Deal
true.
with it.
Alessandro Vagina. And so that was his name. He
Yeah.
was Italian, obviously. In 1581, Alessandro met with Oda Nobunaga, who was considered to be the most powerful man in Japan because he met with Nobunaga because he wanted the Jesuit mission to succeed in the country. And he brought Yasuke with him, and the Japanese were curious. Most of them had never seen a dark-skinned person in their lives, and wherever Yasuke went, there were crowds. Not just because of his skin color, but, like, he was so much taller than the average Japanese person. He was over 6 feet tall and built.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
that's no different
that would
than
draw
how
stares
a
today.
Japanese crowd would react to a 6-foot person now.
Today.
Yeah.
I think if you're over
Like-
over 6 feet to any capacity, the Japanese still, at least from sources I've seen, still kind of look at that like, damn, he's tall.
They're like, holy shit, you're so tall. I mean, also, like, if I see someone who's over 6 feet tall in America, like, it's a little bit more common, but I'm still like, Jesus Christ, like,
Yeah.
how is the weather up there? So, like I said, wherever he went, there were crowds, and rumors of him spread throughout Kyoto before the party arrived. Like, before he got to towns, people were just like, yo, that tall guy, he's coming.
You're coming.
And,
Oh,
Lord, he's coming. And because these rumors were preceding him, crowds exceeding 1,000 people would flock to where he was staying, which not great, but also they're like, bring the tall man out. Bring him. The missionaries that Yasuke was traveling with were scared that the building they were staying in would be destroyed, and some of the Japanese people who were in the crowd were crushed to death and injured in their enthusiasm
Imagine wanting to, like,
about seeing this man.
go see a person and dying because of that.
Like, just a guy,
Just a
Like,
dude.
not even Post Malone.
Not even
Like-
Post Malone. Is Post Malone
even
like the
Post
pinnacle
Malone.
for you?
It's
Is
not
that the guy
even-
that you would get crushed seeing?
It was like the only guy I could think of.
It's wild
At
that
the
your brain
moment.
went to Post Malone.
I don't
Considering
know. I
that,
just was
like,
just like, oh
The
yeah,
love
people
of your
would.
life is Ronald Reagan, and we all know it.
Oh God.
You're right. I'm sure people got absolutely crushed by Ronald. No,
Yeah.
wait, for Ronald Reagan. Both are applicable. So they're crushed to death, and the upheaval died down when Nobunaga sent in his troops. Though he was just like, listen, I don't know what's happening, but you need to bring me whatever is causing the ruckus. Like, Nobunaga wanted to know the identity of the man who had caused people to, like, absolutely lose their minds.
describe this
And so he
ruckus?
ordered his men.
Sorry, that's just my favorite line
ruckus?
from The Breakfast Club. There's like a
Oh,
whole scene
yeah.
where it's
Well,
like, I heard
that's
a
what he
ruckus.
said. He was-
And one of the characters goes, can you describe
Could you
this ruckus?
describe?
This ruckus? Yeah, and people are like, it's this guy, and they brought it to him. They brought this man to Nobunaga and was just like, this is the guy responsible for the ruckus. He hasn't done
He's just
anything.
existing, but everyone's
But here he
freaking
is.
out about it.
Everyone's absolutely losing their minds. So at this point, the Japanese records describe Yasuke as having the blackness of a bull and a healthy and fine physique. He also has the strength of 10 men. 10
Excellent.
small men, I suppose.
I want to say, like, men back then, what did they have to lift? Because we've heard,
Literally
but
everything.
we've heard of a lot of people that had the strength of 10 men, and it's just like, how strong were the men back then, truly?
I don't know.
What are
I
we
mean,
comparing it to?
Yeah, how many?
I
what is
literally
10
have
men?
no idea.
What
Yeah.
can 10 men lift?
What is are we talking about 10 child-sized
Were
men?
they child-sized men?
Because
I mean, they must have been compared to this
I don't know.
gentleman. If his
Well, that's the other thing,
presence
too.
alone was enough to get people crushed in the streets just for taking a peek at him.
Okay, but like, I also feel like there's this whole thing where it's like this man is described as larger than life because, like, that's kind of just how it gets.
Oh, so you think this is sort of like a Paul Bunyan-esque, like,
Yeah,
this is just,
like,
it
it's-
just
but, like, I
becomes a
feel
part
like-
of his legend?
Yeah,
Okay, that's fair.
because I mean, like,
Yeah.
you're also talking about this person who's like out of place in this world.
That's
And,
true.
I mean,
is
it's
being
probably a lot of,
summoned,
like, word of mouth, too, where it's just like, he's a giant, and
Yeah.
he's
They're like, yo, I saw this guy.
ripped, and he can
I saw this man, like,
he can
absolutely
rip a
lift a
man in
house.
half with
Yeah.
his bare hands.
So it's definitely, I feel like it's definitely one of those things where it's like, yeah, probably some of the stuff that is said about him is true. Like, he's probably a bigger than other people, but like, yeah, I feel like it's like also like when we were talking about like Maximinius Thrax.
Yeah.
Where like they were like, oh yeah, he
Oh,
could
yeah, yeah.
wear his wife's bracelet as a thumb ring. Like, it was,
Yeah.
Fair.
Well,
Okay, so it's just
it gets blown out of
it's
proportion.
just one of those things that everyone says about a person that's bigger than they are.
that's true. It's flattering,
it?
I suppose.
Yeah.
You're like, thanks. I am as strong as 10 men. I don't know. Listen, as someone who relies on like people see me and they're not mean to me because I look mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes like your best defense is an
true.
assumption.
True.
So like if people aren't gonna mess with you because they think like
Have the strength of
you
10 men.
are as strong as 10
I
men.
get you.
Yeah, you
That's
might as well
great.
use that
Like,
to your
thanks.
advantage.
You ought to. Yeah, for sure. Okay, we've talked about this long
Yeah.
enough.
So, besides like being that strong, Nobunaga also didn't believe anyone could actually be this black. Like, he thought it was ink, and demanded that he see water put on Yasuke, which obviously didn't fucking work. And after that, he was just like, all right, didn't work. So that's who you are. And then Nobunaga was just like, I like you, Yasuke. And he asked Alessandro to release him from whatever service he had to the Jesuits. And, like, asked Yasuke, like, if he wanted to serve him. And Yasuke apparently said yes. And so Nobunaga made the man a retainer. And he received a stipend, a dagger, and a house. So Yasuke got
I need a
got
deal
a great
like that
deal.
in my life.
Yeah, he was
Right.
just like, here's a stipend, a dagger, and a house, and here's my sword, because he also carried Nobunaga's sword. And he also, and at this point, like, Yasuke was learning Japanese, and Nobunaga gave him free reign around Kyoto, protected him, and speculated that, and some people speculated that Nobunaga would make Yasuke a lord, which was crazy. Like, this guy
Simply
was
unheard
unknown,
of.
and Nobunaga was like, it was like unheard of.
Hey, you want to be a lord? Like, fuck it, why not?
Yeah, fuck it, why not? Like, it didn't really make up for the whole, like, are you covered in ink or is that just you thing? But, like, we're getting there.
I just love that the
So,
qualifications
the
for
next
that.
time-
Like, so presumably there were lords before Yasuke came on the scene, and they were like, I had to go through all these steps to
Yeah.
become a lord. And then they're looking at this guy who just waltzed
Yeah,
in, and they're hearing rumors that he might become a lord, and it's like, all he is tall.
He's just a big
It's
dude.
just a big dude. There's... What?
When was the qualification only big?
Right. I would have been on stilts. I would have been stilts a
I
week
would have
ago.
gotten so fucking fat for this. I would have
Dude,
eaten so much more
okay,
food.
so
Yeah.
you joke, but there were times when I was in China where I just ended up on the front page of the newspaper, not because I had done anything, but because I was sitting there
Yeah.
and I was white. Like, there were times when people, like, the other Chinese teachers would come up to me and be like, oh, so you went to that conference. You're on the front page. And it's like, I was literally just sitting there
I was having lunch.
disassociating. Yeah, I didn't do anything. So, like, I get where Yasuke's coming from. So then the next time Yasuke appears in the historical records is around 1582, as he was accompanying Nobunaga on a victory tour after absolutely annihilating one of Nobunaga's arch enemies. And in the same year, Nobunaga was betrayed and attacked by one of his senior vassals, and it resulted in his death. Yasuke was injured and eventually sent to Jesuit missionaries to be taken care of. It is certain that he didn't die, but it is not clear what happened to him after this. Obviously, there are rumors. It's hard to be a 6-foot-tall black man in 1500s Japan without people noticing you.
Yeah.
So in, like, you know, it's hard to blend in. So in 1584, there's a battle, and it's reported a black man was seen operating 2 cannons. So
Fuck
people
yeah.
are like,
At the
is that
same
Yasuke? Yeah, two
Fuck yeah,
cannons at
baby.
the same time. Only a man with the strength
Only a
of 10
man
men
with the
can do
strength
that,
of
so-
10 men.
Yeah. So then in 1604, there was a painting done that depicts another dark-skinned man in the presence of noble samurai. Then there's an ink stone box made in the 1590s that depicts a black man wearing high-class clothing, as he doesn't appear to be like subservient to anyone else in the tableau. And overall, we don't know if any of these instances actually depict Yasuke, but his presence in Japan and the position he came to occupy is one that is pretty unusual for really any foreigner at the time in Japan. This is right before Japan closes itself off to the rest of the world for 3 centuries of isolation during the shogunate. So the fact that, like, anyone who is not Japanese is sort of, like, making a name for themselves within the hierarchy of Japan is a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was my story. I thought it was cool because, like, you really don't hear about foreigners becoming samurai.
Except for that one Tom Cruise.
Other than Tom Cruise.
We
Yeah.
keep going back to that. I don't know if that's historically accurate, is it?
I mean, there are some
shit.
things that I think were conflated, obviously, for...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, white guy becomes
I'm fairly certain
samurai.
that it's based on, at least partially based on a true story. But I could be wrong. This will be me finding out that Tom Cruise lied about the whole thing. Megan's looking it up right now.
White
Cruise,
guy
why would
becomes-
you lie?
I'm looking it up. Is it this guy?
Wait, hang on.
Maybe. Oh yeah, I guess it was. No, that's not true. Anyway, I'll
Was The
keep
Last
looking.
Samurai based on true events? The movie chronicles a real-life Japanese rebellion from the 19th century, but fictionalizes several historical events and people.
Was the Battle of Shimonoseki?
I don't know. The Last Samurai's timeline
Anyway,
is
tell your
mostly
story. I'm
accurate.
gonna
No,
keep
this
looking.
has to happen now.
I gotta know.
The Last Samurai.
According to historians, the costumes and overall production is spot on. What the fuck?
Oh, that's good.
Maybe I'll tell this story in a future podcast episode. Yeah, I know.
How
I'd be
rude of
taking
you.
your shtick. And I'm doing it again right now. Here's the deal, guys, audience, listeners, friends, compatriots, if we could call you that. Comrade,
Sure, why not?
if you want to go that far. Or if you're from Russia. We recorded once in October. We goofed it up schedule-wise when it came to October recordings. And so, therefore, I feel robbed of having been able to tell some spooky stories. And so today, I'm going to do a spooky story. I had a stroke just then. I'm fine now. I'm better.
I'm glad you're
So
okay.
today, I'm doing a spooky story because you can't stop me and neither can my co-hosts. So this story takes place in Valeska, Iowa. And
The great spooky place of
the great
Iowa.
spooky...
Oh yeah. Well, listen, it has so much corn.
Yes, but it is also not the site of the Children of the Corn story. Although it is possible that corn children exist in Iowa. Corn children.
Corn children.
The
children of the corn.
made
A corn
I've never been to
stalks.
Iowa.
So anyways, it's Valeska... Guys, my brain not working. Valeska, Iowa. The night is June 9th. The year of our Lord is 1912. This story involves a gentleman by the name of Josiah Moore, as well as his wife Sarah, their 4 children Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, and 2 girls that were staying the night with them, Lena Stillinger and Ina Stillinger. Josiah was a prominent town businessman, and he was also heavily involved in his local Presbyterian church. And on the night in question, the Moore family, along with their young guests, had been attending a church function until about 10 p.m., and after the church function, they went home. On that night, a little after midnight, an intruder broke into the house and brutally murdered everybody inside.
Oh
no!
no!
So the neighbors became suspicious when they didn't see the family engaging in their morning routines the next day. So a neighbor walked over and let their chickens out to, begin grazing. They tried to open the doors, but the doors were locked. They tried knocking on the door. They tried calling the house. No response. And so they reached out to Josiah's brother, and he came over. He tried the same things, knocking on the door, phoning the family, and unfortunately was unsuccessful in reaching anybody. They eventually called the town marshal, who came in and, did all the same things, knocked on the door, tried to hoot and holler, but he eventually broke into the house and discovered the gruesome scene. And when he emerged from the house, he said to someone else who was there at the time that there had been a person murdered in every bed in the house.
Jeez.
Neighbors had not heard any cries for help in the night, and none of the bodies looked to have any defensive wounds except for Lena Stillinger, who had been found, quote, lying crossways on the bed, which just meant that, she had tried to escape. But other than that, everyone else, they assume, had been asleep through their murder. So I guess that's, small miracles. Especially when you consider how young everyone in this story is. So the six victims, or 6 of the victims are children. So it's really kind of, it's good to know that they didn't
nerds,
wake up, except for one of them.
That's true.
But yeah, I said I did describe it as a particularly brutal or gruesome scene because while I was doing research on this story, they said that Josiah's face had been bludgeoned so completely that they weren't even able to find his eyes.
Oh, jeez.
And I did say bludgeoned because despite the fact that the murder weapon was an axe, the sharp edge of the axe was not used on anyone in the building except for Sarah. All of the rest of the murders were committed with the blunt edge of the axe. So,
jeez.
Based on blood patterns, the killer started in the parents' bedroom, killed Josiah, and he was swinging, he or she, I mean, they assume that it's a male, but the murderer had swung the axe with such ferocity that there were cuts in the ceiling. So, him swinging that high up. So he kills Josiah, then he kills Sarah, then he goes to their children's room and kills all their children. Then he goes back to Josiah and Sarah's room to continue bludgeoning Josiah. Then he goes to the Stillinger girls' room and kills them.
Is he just a juggernaut? Jesus.
And they say that, Josiah got wailed on something fierce. But the other...
If I was in Criminal Minds, it would be the victim knew the assailant.
Yeah. I mean...
Well, so
maybe it's because I've just been playing more Fallout 4. All my brain is thinking of is hacking and whacking and smacking, chopping
Yeah.
at me. Like,
They
Yup.
say that they found 2 cigarettes in the attic. So all signs point to this person had just been in their attic
lover.
laying in wait for them to come home from a church function.
Oh, never mind.
jeez.
Not
The
maybe
axe
a
that
lover.
he had used had been one that he found in their backyard. But what made this scene a little bit more weird is,
It wasn't
I
weird
mean, no,
already?
it was super weird. But the axe was left out in plain sight. It was leaned up against a wall. And next to it was a 4-pound slab of bacon that
What?
served no purpose, truthfully. All of the drawers in the house had been
Just a
rifled through for articles of clothing that were used to cover the mirrors. So, like a kitchen apron, used to cover the mirrors in the house, and then there was, I can't remember what article of clothing was used to cover the, sort of like the doorway window, to the entrance of the house. The window was covered, so nobody could see.
Interesting.
But along with that, there was also an uneaten plate of breakfast in the kitchen, and next to the uneaten plate of breakfast was a bloody bowl of water. And then, as I mentioned, upon further, exploration of the house, they did find 2 cigarettes in the attic. But there's no... This was never solved. This is an unsolved murder.
Okay.
I
mean, what year was this
It was
again?
1912.
Okay, like,
Oh.
yeah, forensics ain't that
Yeah.
great.
What do you mean not that great?
Doesn't exist
Does it
yet.
exist? You got one guy called Gumshoe Jim Bop, and he comes in, and he's just like,
I don't know who...
They're dead.
I don't know who did these
All right.
murders.
It might have
pack
been
it in, boys.
Jimmy
It could have been Jimmy
Two
Two-Shoes. So essentially, they do go through the process of trying to find... they go through the process of trying to find someone who killed this family. And they start with all the, transients that had been wandering through town at the time. It's
always a
always
transient,
somebody
I
who's
guess.
just passing by. But the 3
Yeah.
most likely
No.
candidates in this murder end up being a gentleman, a reverend by the name of George Kelly. Yeah.
A reverend?
A man of
A
God.
man of God?
That makes
There's
sense.
also a gentleman
That makes
a gentleman by the name of William Mansfield. And then other research has led to a guy named Paul Miller. Or Mueller, I think, is how that's...
Oh, okay.
So the
Man named
a
Manderson.
man named what?
That's what that sounds like. Just like, you just said the most generic
Yeah.
man's name ever. They're
That
like,
guy,
that
Paul
guy.
Miller. Paul Blart Malkoff.
Yeah, that's a generic name.
So
Paul Blart Mall.
George
Paul Blart Mall.
George Kelly was...
Mall murderer.
George Kelly was a
George Kelly
reverend.
was.
And he had hitched a ride on a train the day immediately after the murder, so the 10th. And while he was on the train, he was talking to another passenger of the train about 8 souls who had died in Villisca. And he had said that he had been praying for their souls. And that got people's attention. However, the problem is that he had, a long history and a well-documented history of mental health issues.
Oh, okay.
So when he got arrested and tried for the murders, the people on the jury were like, we're not sure that this guy could actually kill people because he's a little bit simple. So he ends up getting acquitted of that crime twice. They charge him 2 separate times, and he gets the case gets dismissed.
I don't think we can arrest this guy. All right, let him go. But wait,
what if we arrest this guy? Yeah. The first time it got acquitted, and then the second time the first time there was like a hung jury, and so they retried him because the law states that you can do that. And then the second time he was acquitted of the crime. The other man, William Mansfield, was the target of an investigator by the name of James. Can you calm down back there? Jesus. Target of a man named James Newton Wilkerson. And
what a name.
And this investigator had thought that William Mansfield was responsible for a stretch of murders, but Mansfield had an alibi for a number of them that he was accused of. And this process went on so long with this investigator that Mansfield ended up suing Wilkerson for slander, and he won like $2,200. Third person, back then. Imagine what it is in 2020 money.
I know.
A lot.
Oh, God, we can't even do the math. It's incalculable.
But then the last person, he's most likely, but was never tried. I think he ended up getting arrested for different murders, but Paul Mueller, he was an immigrant that came from Germany, and he used to travel by train. So he would jump from train to train.
Okay.
But he was essentially a serial killer. He would travel from town to town, and his
taking trains, murdering people. Got it.
Trains, murdering people. His MO was using the blunt side of an axe. He would cover the bodies with sheets so that their blood spatter wouldn't go everywhere, and he would also cover mirrors and windows.
Just like Dexter.
But
I mean, that sounds like
it does sound like the guy. But he would also
it
lock
sounds
the doors
like
upon
the guy.
Exiting. He would leave the murder weapon out in plain sight. But in my research, I did not see anything where he confessed to the murders, and I'm not sure. I don't know if. Like, he's definitely responsible for other murders in the surrounding areas, and his MO is, like, he would attack towns that were close to the train, and as I said, Reverend George Kelly had left town via train, so, like, this was close to a train.
Yeah.
So, Paul Miller is pretty much the closest they have to a
suspect.
He's the closest to a real deal suspect in this case. But I mean, as of now, 2023, no one's officially been, charged. Like, no one was ever officially charged for that crime and brought to justice for this specific set of moitas.
Huh.
So.
Well, I guess the murderer walks free 100 fucking years later.
Story.
It was 1912. Of course he was always going to walk
of our
free.
Lord, 1912. And we don't have DNA machines.
They couldn't even see a fucking iceberg
for
the
to
Titanic.
Be fair,
the
binoculars were locked in a chest. In case anybody didn't know that, today you learned that the reason that the Titanic did not see the iceberg in time to do anything about it is because the binoculars that they would have used for such a task were locked in the captain's lockbox, and nobody got them out.
Well, that's dumb.
Even though they were driving at night.
We'll keep those safe out of everyone's way.
So,
We don't want people to trip
Yeah, but I
over
wanted
them.
to tell a spooky story because I felt like I got robbed by our schedules.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You're like, Roanoke wasn't spooky.
spooky. And like
It
Yeah.
was just a guy
it was a guy
with
that
bad planning.
left for 3 years and was like, I wonder if my Neopets are okay. Know what I mean?
Pretty
So
much.
I wonder
yeah.
what better to scare the audience?
My Neopets, my
What
family.
better way to scare the audience than to tell them about 6 children and 2 parents
Moida.
that got brutally murdered by an axe?
Fair enough. Well, I'm gonna take away and not talk about murder. I'm gonna talk about something else
I mean,
dumb
that's fair.
instead. How's that sound?
That sounds great. The audience will probably like
as I
that
said
as
in-
like a breath of fresh air as well.
Yeah, breath of fresh air. Well, I did say in my intro that I'm going to cover something that I previously said, hey, I should talk about this because, every now and then I should be true to my word. Just every now
so
and then,
often.
not all the time. Every so often.
Sometimes.
I gotta keep it mysterious, And you don't have to really wait long for my follow-up because I was feeling kind of lazy, and the first tab I pulled up for notes today, which I finished 5 minutes before we started recording, was on a guy that I talked about in the Halloween episode.
Nice.
So enjoy the fruits of my procrastination. Tonight, we will be discussing the wonderfully named Jorgen Jorgensen.
I love
Jorgen.
Jorgen. Although every time I read his
Jorgen.
name or hear his name, all I can think of is
Jorgen
fucking
von
Jorgen von
Strangle,
Strangle from
But
Timmy
But to be
Turner.
fair, like every
Timmy
time
Turner.
I hear the word tonight recently, all I can think about is tonight will be the night that I will fall for you.
No,
I
never,
don't
no.
appreciate that I'm in that rabbit hole, but like you said tonight.
Where are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Where are you?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. So tonight I'm going to be talking about Jorgen Jorgensen, because man, I not only did I pull up him as like my first research tab, but also his story is so fucking bananas that I feel like it's just I want to tell it before I forget to.
Gwen Stefani would describe it as
That's fair.
Ananas.
Yes. So Jorgensen was a Danish adventurer in the early to mid 1800s, or as some might call it, the Age of Revolution. Because, well...
Oh, is that what some's calling it?
That's what some people call it, the Age of Revolution, as scholars might say. And that's just because everybody do be revolting in Europe and the Americas at this point, which, pin that note, it is important for later. It's a mouse control.
It's a mouse control we use later.
So, Jorgen was born as the second oldest son to the royal watchmaker of the Danish monarch.
Do you ever think? I'm sorry to interrupt because we've been doing a fair
continue.
amount of interrupting tonight. But do you ever think how fucking cool it would be to be so good at something that you become like the king's personal watchmaker, or the baron, or
that's
the
dope.
town governor, and it's just like, this guy's so fucking good at making watches. I have decided that I will buy no other watch but one made
Except
by
this
this man.
guy's. Yeah.
You're like the anime protagonist
Yeah.
of watchmaking.
With pink hair and everything.
Yeah.
Like whole shows are made about you. Like whole manga series.
Look, if they-
I'm the king's watchmaker.
If they can make an entire anime about a swim team, they can make
And
it
then you
about
just
a
see
watchmaker.
Listen,
a
if
cut
they
to
could-
him being like, "Oh no, the spring is broken, and I have to deliver this watch by 2:30, and it's 2:25."
We don't know
because
the
the watch
time
is
because the
broken.
watch is broken.
Oh God, no! But
I'm sorry.
Jeez.
I'm just
No, it's
thinking it's
fine.
so fucking cool
so-
that people like back in the day used to be so good at their job that the king would just be like, "I like
Yeah, they
you.
were just
I'm
like,
gonna
I like you. You're mine.
I'm gonna use your
Yeah.
products forever."
Yeah. So Jorgen was the second oldest son to the royal watchmaker, whose name was Jürgen Jürgensen.
Of course.
Because of course.
Of course. I am Jürgen, son of Jürgen.
He changed his name from his birth name from Jürgensen to Jorgensen. Yeah. Because he wanted Jürgen Jürgensen, but his dad was Jürgen Jürgensen.
I'm Jürgen Jürgensen, son of Jürgen Jürgensen.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just bananas. But I don't know how else to say it. Like, I'm a little bit flabbergasted. That's going to be a moment when
Zach edits out of the podcast where we just have minutes of dead air where we're just like, yeah, this guy's name was weird.
It was like a second.
It was a second, but it felt like an eternity.
So, at the ripe old age of 15, Jorgen finishes school and becomes the apprentice to Captain Henry Marwood, who was a British sailor in the British Navy. And in 1799, Jorgen and Henry sailed to Cape Town and then Port Jackson, which was the newest cities in the wonderful colony of Australia. And Cape Town and Port Jackson sound pretty familiar from what I talked about in the Halloween episode. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yep.
And so he, kind of hangs out in Australia for a bit, and then 1801 rolls around, and Jorgen joins the vessel, the Lady Nelson, where he sails around and basically just founds a bunch of towns in, Australia, including Tasmania and Hobart. So, nothing special, just founding a bunch of places. But the wackiness of Jürgen Jürgensen doesn't really ramp up until about 1807. And boy, does it fucking ramp up.
As it often does.
As it often does. It's always like a normal thing until it's just, oh my god, this is not a normal thing.
That's literally that's the reason for the podcast.
Yeah, right? Oh, this is a normal life. Oh god, no, what have we done? So, in 1807, Jorgen is visiting his family, and he witnesses the Battle of Copenhagen, and is subsequently like, hey, I want to do my part, and is given command of the Danish vessel, Admiral Julet. And he uses this vessel to fight the British, the British he once used to work for, because fuck it, why not, if my name isn't Jürgen Jürgensen?
My name isn't.
So, the Admiral Julet starts the naval battle with the HMS Sappho, and it goes really poorly for Jorgen and the Julet, and Jorgen is taken prisoner after the boat is sunk, and he is treated as a privateer by the British government. But since he had kind of good standings with the British, they basically just parole him and brush him off. It's Jorgen being Jorgen, guys. I don't know. What do you want?
Just guys being dudes.
Just guys being dudes. And he takes his paroled ass to Jorgen takes his paroled ass to the British government and is like, hey, why don't we fill a ship with merchant goods and sail over to Iceland because they're suffering from food shortages and I'm ready to make hella cash money. I don't know about you.
How'd that go?
Because apparently, so that's the thing. Jorgen was Danish. Jorgen was Danish, but he spent so much time in England that he got all about that bread making. And so Jorgen takes his first voyage to Iceland, and it is a total fucking bust, because the Danish have a monopoly on trade to Iceland, and since it's a British merchant ship, they're like, no pip pip cheerio goods in here, mates. Fuck off.
And they're like, that's a little stereotypical, but go on.
Well, so the other thing is, at this time, England and Ireland are fighting the Swedes and the Danes at the same fucking time. It's like this it's a two-way war, but with four parties. So, like, the British government and the Danish government are, like, at each other's necks. So I don't know why Jorgen was like, I could pull up in a British ship and sell a bunch of goods, and it'll be okay.
He had confidence.
Like, he had confidence that he was like, I'm Dutch, I'm sailing for the British, but I'm Dutch. They'll let me peddle British goods here, right? No.
Surely.
But undeterred as ever, Jorgen jumps on a second voyage, and once again is turned away. But then he remembers, oh, hey, everyone else has such a fucking hard-on for revolution, so let's go fuck Iceland, everyone.
Hasn't Iceland been through enough?
Well, Jorgen and all of his shipmates go find the governor of Iceland, one Count of Trampe, and Jorgen arrests him, throws him in jail, and declares himself protector of Iceland.
Wow.
He declares himself protector of Iceland when he's going
That's
to
my
fuck
thought,
up
too,
Iceland.
is like, I'm protecting Iceland from me.
From myself. From me.
Yeah.
I am Iceland's biggest threat.
Well, so the whole thing was, so Jorgen declares himself protector of Iceland on the 26th of June, 1809, and his whole thought process was that Iceland was under Danish rule.
Yeah.
It was basically a Danish colony at this point. And so Jorgen was like, I'm going to be protector of Iceland, and as soon as you guys are able to govern yourselves, we'll reinstate Althing, which is the Icelandic national government, like their governing body. Think of our Congress. I guess that's the best way I can put it. I could be totally wrong, but like from my brief research. So he's like, I'll absolutely reinstate a Icelandic government that runs Iceland, but until that happens, I'm running the show, because we can't just, like, transition from, hi, you're a Danish colony, to, you run yourselves. That's not going to go well. Yeah, he basically was like, I'll reinstate Althing as soon as I determine that you can handle governing yourselves. I want to make this like the United States. But we all know how that turned out, so I guess fuck Jorgen, what do you know?
Not much.
However, his protectorate of Iceland does not last long, because on the 22nd of August, 1809, 2 months later, the Danish government comes back and fucking kicks Jorgen out and is like, the fuck, dude? And it once again becomes a Danish colony.
Yeah, classic.
In a moment of weirdness, because I guess even though the Danish are at war with the British, they still feel like doing weird things, they send Jorgen back to England, where he is tried and found guilty of breaking his parole and is jailed immediately.
As he so deserves.
And as he so deserves for deciding that he wanted to run a country himself, after failing to be a good salesman.
I just think I still think that the best part of this story is when he declares himself the protector of Iceland.
Yeah.
That is the best part of this story. He's just like, I'm going to
He's
fuck up
like-
Iceland.
He's like, I'm
I will
protecting
protect
you
you,
from me."
Iceland. I'm protecting you. Why do you make me do this?
Iceland, why do you make me do this?
Yeah.
Iceland, why do you make
do
me
this,
attack
Iceland?
you?
And
Iceland, you've been sitting here
You're
up in the
tearing
Arctic
me
Circle,
apart, Iceland!
minding your own goddamn business.
Iceland, you're tearing me apart.
Oh, hey, Mark.
Aha, Mark. You would think that this is where Jorgensen's story ends, but he's a man of means, and he means
He is
to
a man
do
of
more
means.
terrible things. And so he is let out of jail in 1811 after 3 years of jail time. And he spends most of his time after being released in London, where he basically just gets piss drunk off of his ass and gambles a ton. And he racks up so much debt that it would make the Colonel Tom Parker blush.
Dang.
So, after racking up a bunch of debt and getting a bunch of drunken disorderlies, he once again is thrown in jail. where he doesn't stay for very long, and then he gets out and travels to Spain and Portugal and Gibraltar, and after a little bit of travel, he goes, I'm refreshed. Time to come back to merry old England, where his debtors are waiting for him and throw him right back into jail.
Hey guys,
My debtors. No.
it's like he comes home to England with his arms open wide, and he goes, "Oh, my debtors!" And they're like, "Hey."
The consequences
Jail
of
for
my
you.
own actions.
Literally, it's like, Jorgen, you can't run away from your problems forever.
He's like, "No, but watch me try."
Jorgen, you're not the real protectorate.
Watch me try. However, fortune favors the bold, and Jorgen convinces the British Foreign Office to release him from jail and instate him as a spy in Germany and France during the end of the Napoleonic Wars.
Oh,
This is crazy.
Because why not? Jorgensen witnessed the Battle of Waterloo. He was never involved, but he witnessed
well, he had
it.
popcorn
He had popcorn.
and a front row seat.
Pretty much. He literally was like, I'm just going to watch this thing unfold. He returns to England after his stint as a spy, and writes a bunch of reports and papers and articles, and basically just does a little bit of writing until he is accused of theft in 1820 and is subsequently imprisoned, released, and sent back after he failed to leave England.
I love that this guy's story is literally just like, went to prison, got out, did a little bit of a walkabout, got in a fight with the country,
Went to
went to
prison.
Did a
prison,
bit of a walkabout.
got out, went traveling.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take a break,
Yeah.
you know?
So he is accused of theft, and he gets sent to prison. And upon his release, part of a condition of his parole was that he was supposed to leave Britain. And he was just like, nah, man, I like it here. And so they sent him back to prison because he didn't leave.
Nice.
I like it here.
I
I'm
like it
not
here.
leaving.
I'm staying. He was supposed to get executed, but instead he had like a fancy ass friend who said, "Like, no,
But
we're
he
just gonna
talked him
send him
down.
on." Yeah, his friend was like, "All right, we're gonna send him on transportation as opposed to execution." Which, if you're not familiar, sometimes if you were given a sentence of death in England back in colonial times, you would instead be sent to transportation, where you were shipped off to one of the colonies to basically be their fucking problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jorgensen is sent to transportation to Australia, and he is back in Australia by 1825, and he arrives back in Tasmania by 1826. He basically fucks around Tasmania for a little while, helping prevent circulation of forged treasury bills, petitioning, having someone petition for him a ticket of leave so he can actually get off of fucking Australia, and like doing a bunch of exploring around the area. He becomes the constable of Van Diemen's Land for some fucking reason. Like, he was in jail a bunch, and then they made him chief of police for a hot second.
My favorite is when people are in jail for a little bit, but that's like not a horrible consequence.
Yeah, it's like, I went to jail. Who
They're
gives a
like,
fuck?
whatever. Yeah, they're just like, this was a minor blip.
Yeah, Jorgensen is pardoned by the British government in 1835, but he's like, fuck it, I'm chilling in Tasmania, I'm gonna stay here. He then married an Irish convict and died.
Because he married an Irish convict.
Classic.
No, he marries an Irish convict, Nora Corbett, in 1831, and then he dies on January 20th, 1841. So he had like 10 years of marriage,
Okay.
but like, he's like, after the pardon, there's not really a lot of notable stuff. He kind of like calms down, writes like 6 fucking books, some of which are true, some of which are basically
classic.
like Procopius method. Procopius the fuck up about his life. And then just dies like 10 years after his marriage. But yeah, Iceland refers to Jorgen as... I'm not going to try to fucking pronounce how this looks, because I'm going to send it to you guys. what they call Jorgen
Okay.
Jorgensen, and you can both be like, on Discord, yeah, and you're both going to be like, yeah, no fucking way you're pronouncing that shit.
Jornder.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
There's
like,
so
If you're
many
Dutch
words.
and I said
what I can
something
see-
inappropriate, tell me about it.
Fight
yes, so
me in court.
as far as I can tell, it's Jornder Hunda de Kaga Kondurgadur.
We are getting very close to awakening the little Danish boys.
Oh no, yeah, let's not do that.
No, don't do it.
But yeah, so
Don't do this.
It is literally translated to Jorgen the Dog Days King, a reference to like when
Jorgen the Dog Days King.
Yes.
What a banger.
So,
What a banger.
What a banger. The dog days are not over for Jorgen. But yeah, so it's basically like he was the protector of Iceland when Sirius was around, like the dog constellations were in the sky, so they call him the Dog Days King.
That's really cool. Steve will tell us how to pronounce that correctly. If
I
you can
hope
count
so.
on
But
Steve
yeah,
for
so
one
that is-
thing, it's that he'll correct
It's good pronunciation.
our pronunciation. If you can count on him for another thing, it's just being a solid dude.
It's being a good
He's
friend.
just a great guy to be around. If you guys ever get the chance to get a friend like Steve, I hope that you don't pass up that opportunity because he is just a peach.
You know what? I love that we're saying this as I just look at my phone and see that I have a notification that Steve sent me a meme on Instagram about why Michael Caine and Tim Curry are the best additions to the Muppet Cast, and I have to agree with it.
That's true.
I was having a conversation. So Steve decided to delete his Facebook, and so the only way that he keeps in touch is with Instagram and with he has Messenger, but that's because we play D&D and he wants to make sure that he can communicate. And he's like, I was talking to him about the memes that he'll send, and he's like, I try to tailor these to what I think people's interests are. And I just equated that so much to an AI learning how to make conversation. Where he's just like, oh, that meme didn't hit. I'll try a different one. That's just...
Okay, but I can appreciate that because Steve memes are perfectly
They
curated.
are.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
They are. Guys, I will
know.
reiterate, if you can find a friend like Steve, do it. Solid guy. Known him since high school.
10 out of
10
10.
out of 10. So anyways, I would assume that that's where your story ends.
Yeah, with death, as most stories
stories
do.
With
do.
Steve being the best friend ever.
And because...
My story ends on Steve being the best.
Yeah.
As most stories do.
As most stories do.
Yeah, because the podcast has come to... Or because Zach's story has come to an end, so too must the podcast. Which means that...
For now. For this week.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
I'm
not
gonna. I still have the mic. I'm
Yeah,
keeping
Zach's
it. I won't
holding
let you
on to it.
worry
I'm
about
not
me cutting
building
you
up
off.
any momentum here. The days of Zach interrupting me during my ending shtick are over.
Yes. Well, tonight we thank you very much for joining us on our dumb as shit fun time that we have talking about dumb as shit people in history, or spooky things, or creepy things. It depends on our mood. But anyway, we appreciate you listening. And if you like listening to us, tell a friend that you also think would like listening to us. It is a really easy and really free way for us to continue doing this because, well, the more support we get, the better it is for us. The more we get recognized, and that's just makes our lives so much better and makes doing this. The more the merrier. We really enjoy doing this, and we want as many people as possible to listen to it because we like the dumb things we have to say, and we hope you do too. But if you do want to support us monetarily, we'd appreciate it. We do have a Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/Triumvirate Productions. You can support us on a $3, $5, or $10 level, each one kind of having their own little bit of goodies equated to them. If you don't have money and you have already told all of your friends and they're sick of hearing about the 3 idiots that you listen to every Friday or every other Friday, get new friends. Expand your social circle. It's important. But also, you can head on over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and review. If new ratings and reviews pop up, sometimes we like to read them on air because we appreciate hearing about what you have to say. And the other thing you can do is follow us on our socials. You can find us on Facebook by looking the Triumvirate Productions up. You can also find us on Instagram at _Triumvirate_Productions. And yeah, send us a message. Talk to us. Hang out with us. Enjoy the show. I don't know. We're just here to have fun.
The enjoy the show is not an I don't know. Definitely enjoy the show.
That's true. Definitely enjoy it. Like, if you're not enjoying it, like, why are you still here? What are you doing?
What are you even doing here?
Okay, so with Zach's spiel coming to an end, as it so often does, it leads directly into my thing, which is where I talk to you for a matter of seconds and do some corny bit about how I have notes, or, you know, I have a thing to say, or I'll go, look over there, what's that? It's coming toward us so fast. It's, what the fuck, history?